Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast, hosted by Jake Bolden and presented by the Conseco Group General Contracting and Mighty Dog Roofing. Don't miss another Tuesday episode by subscribing to the podcast on all streaming platforms or catch our visual presentation uploaded every week on YouTube. Don't miss our next ticket giveaways by subscribing and following on all Blue Raider Podcast social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden, and in today's episode, we'll be doing a spring sports rundown where we go over all of our spring athletic programs. Their seasons have come to an end, while some are still continuing on with a few more weeks left of the semester. So don't miss that, and of course, stick around to the very end, where we will be going over all things basketball offseason as well as football offseason signings. So you don't want to miss that. But before we get into that spring sport rundown, I want to take just a second to thank our sponsors of today's episode, beginning with Mighty Dog Roofing. When it comes to your home, trust Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for all your needs. As a veteran and locally owned business, we're honored to be one of just 11 Owens Corning contractors nationwide to win their prestigious service award. From roofing and gutters to windows and siding, our expert team delivers top quality craftsmanship and unmatched service. We're here to protect your home with pride and precision. Choose Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East, where excellence is a tradition. Call them today at 615-MD Roofs. That's ROOFS, or visit their website at mightydogroofing.com. And a big thanks to the Conseco Group. Since 1987, the Conseco Group has been turning dreams into reality. Whether it's pre-construction consulting, construction management, design build, or renovations and improvements, we're here to exceed your expectations. At Conseco Group, we don't just deliver, we deliver with precision, passion, and unparalleled quality. Our hands-on approach ensures your investment is maximized and your vision is brought to life. From Clarksville down to Columbia and beyond, trust the Conseco Group to handle every detail with expertise and care. If you're ready to build your future, contact the Conseco Group today at 615-298-9907 or visit their website at consecogroup.com. Again, big thanks to the Conseco Group and Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for sponsoring today's episode. Now it's time to do our spring sports rundown as I promised. We've got a lot of teams to get to, but I think it would be a shame if we didn't start with the most successful one thus far, and that is our men's tennis program. They are a week and a half at the time of this release, removed from their Conference USA Championship. They're 6 straight. I know I highlighted them a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to highlight them once more as the season has finally come to a conclusion. They lost in the round of 64 this last weekend to Duke by a score of 4-0, but that doesn't mean that we can't take a little bit more time to dive deep into what this team was able to accomplish this year. As I already said, winning 6 straight Conference USA titles isn't already enough. They did finish this year ranked 46th nationally, and at one point this year did reach 36 as their highest all-time ranking. But to highlight this roster, and it is a star-studded roster, and a lot of these guys you should be excited about if you're on the men's tennis program. Jimmy Borndame, obviously excited about a lot of these guys, and I'll do my best to give them all their due diligence here. But Kareem Alamin was the player of the year for Conference USA, where he finished with an 11-8 record on court 1. He is a junior, so thankfully we'll have him back this next year. Another guy who has been by far for me the most impressive was Kasper Zimkowiak. He wins newcomer of the year again as a freshman, where he went 12-2, had time on various courts. But at one point this year, he did have the program record for most consecutive wins with 11 straight singles victory. Another guy, junior Andre Horak, wins outstanding singles player for the Conference USA tournament. And then you have junior Shu Matsuoka and sophomore Igor Mandu Baranger, who were the outstanding doubles in the Conference USA tournament. And then on the totality for the season, Conference USA all-first team, Alamin and Rostislav Halfinger, Orak, and Simkowiak all made the first team. So that is 2 juniors, a freshman, and then Rosti, who is the lone senior on this year's program, made first team. And then second team, just by sheer number, was Jakob Kroslak, a sophomore, and then Matsuoka. So again, another sophomore and junior that are on your second team. And then your first team doubles was Alamin Horak, who finished the year ranked 63rd nationally as a doubles pairing. And Matsuoka and Baranger finished in first team doubles as well. And then second team doubles was Kroslak and Halfinger. And then, of course, to round it all out, Jimmy Borndame wins his 12th Coach of the Year in his career, as well as his 8th Coach of the Year award in Conference USA. So, so much really to congratulate this program on. But I think most importantly, winning 6 is a big deal. But going through that lineup and roster as I just did, you're going to be returning 5 of those 6 that are on your top 6. So they're due to repeat. I hate to put that pressure on Jimmy, but I know that he's going to do it more than anyone else. That team is due to win a 7th straight next year with all that production that's going to be back. So I'm excited again with what this team was able to accomplish this year. I know at times they were missing that marquee win that they knew that they're capable of, and they have ranked wins this year. Don't get me wrong, but I think this team is poised, fighting through some injury this year to be back next year for a 7th straight again, and kind of reinsert themselves back into that national conversation once more. So hats off to Coach Borndame, all these guys that I've mentioned on a successful season, and we look forward to seeing some of them back in action this fall. And they're not the only team that was successful there. The Adams Tennis Complex, as well as the outdoor complex, the women's tennis program finished their Conference USA season at 17-8, or their regular season at 17-8, finished at the Conference USA semifinals, falling in the semifinals to Louisiana Tech. Albeit falling in the semifinals, they were just short of making the finals, which is where La Tech eventually would fall to FIU, all things considered. But it was a big turnaround for this team that finished below 500 last year to get to 17 wins this year. And they're not done yet. They did get invited to the UTR NIT this next week, or as I'm recording this, it'll be this week, the 7th through the 9th in Rome, Georgia. They'll face off against North Alabama. It's an 8-team tournament, very similar when I say NIT to like what is comparable to basketball NIT. So they're going to have an opportunity to win a postseason title this week in Rome, Georgia. So keep your eyes peeled for that on social media. But I want to highlight, too, not only did they bounce back from a losing record last year, but had their most wins in program history since 2018. That's the most in head coach Bailey Duvall's career here at MTSU, minus what would have been the 2020 season, who was poised to eclipse that 17 mark. But obviously things ended because of COVID-19. But this team was poised from the beginning. They looked really good on paper, and they proved that they were a top 2 seed there in the Conference USA tournament. So as far as postseason honors, Alicia Truden, she was the redshirt senior graduate, however you want to label her. She was a first team selection to the Conference USA awards, 11-4, all on court 1. So being the top performer for her team, she did an excellent job. Cassidy Maitea, the senior, also got second team Conference USA honors. She finished 12-6, and throughout the year she had a 7-match win streak. And then Truden and Rutuja Chafalkar, a junior, was a Conference USA doubles second team, finishing with a 15-3 season record. So hats off to them. Truden, Maitea, those two will be moving on. But the women's program still returns a lot of talent for next year as well. So I expect big things, hopefully building some momentum moving into the 25-26 season for Coach Teo and the Lady Raiders. Next, we talk about softball. Softball had what would be defined as a great week. They got a sweep of UTEP, but unfortunately, existential factors keeps them out of the Conference USA tournament. Unlike baseball, softball only gets 6 teams into the Conference USA tournament. So the Lady Raiders going into the weekend were 1 game back of Sam Houston, who was that 6th place team. So you need a little bit of help. You knew you had to sweep UTEP to really keep yourself in that conversation, but you needed Louisiana Tech, who was playing who was playing Sam Houston, to win 2 of 3. Louisiana Tech had a little bit of skin in the game. They had to win that series to get themselves into a position to get the 2nd overall seed and get a bye into the Conference USA tournament. So you kind of felt confident that Sam Houston would slip up against the Louisiana Tech team who's trying to get a bye in the tournament. But Sam Houston, and as improbable as it was, going into the 7th inning at home against Louisiana Tech on Sunday, they were being no hit. And then, of course, and they miraculously pieced together 2 runs in the bottom of the 7th, and then they walk it off in the bottom of the 8th. And in heartbreaking fashion for the Lady Raiders, Sam Houston walks off their way into the Conference USA tournament, leaving MTSU out. So, albeit you swept UTEP much like you needed to get into the tournament, but it's not going to be enough. You're going to finish 1 game back of Sam Houston. So, just shy of making the Conference USA tournament in Bowling Green. But there's still a lot to be proud of for this team for what it's worth. Finishing the year 26-27, just one shy of 500, as well as 13-14 in Conference USA, also one shy of 500. A lot of young players on this team that you hope to return next year. I know the transfer portal isn't as crazy in some of these spring sports as it is for our major sports, but Macy Harder earned Freshman of the Week honors for Conference USA, a big freshman for you that has got a lot of timely hits for you. Layla Amon, someone who we had on the show within the last month, earned Conference USA Pitcher of the Week honors, not just Freshman of the Week, but Pitcher of the Week honors. Herself, and then Jenna Want as someone who are more than likely going to be going up for Freshman of the Year awards coming up in the postseason awards. Other names, too, on this roster, Ansley Blevin, someone who we had on last year, who has continued her power hitting this year, hitting 15 home runs, which is tied for 5th overall in Conference USA. 41 RBIs. That's 8th in Conference USA. And then a transfer pickup, Addie Edgman, who actually transferred to MTSU from Western Kentucky, hit leadoff for the Lady Raiders. She had 10 home runs, 10 doubles, 27 RBIs, someone who I could potentially see on the second team Conference USA. But overall, this team has a lot of talent. They're going to return a lot of talent. I believe they're losing 2 starters. It's going to be Ava Tepe, Ava Brooks, Julia Garcia, who also plays a little bit of designated player for them, also can play first base. So they're going to need some to backfill those positions. Ennis Harvey, someone else who is a designated player for them who can hit. But collectively, the core is going to return, barring transfers. Obviously, I would keep my eye on Want and Layla Amon. I'm sure could be a hot commodity. But this team in general is very talented, and I hate that they missed it by one game. But it comes back to some of those games they missed earlier this year. If you were able to pick one up against Louisiana Tech, even Sam Houston for that matter, you were 1 run away from run ruling them here in Murfreesboro and getting a sweep, which would have won you the tiebreaker against them. So there's a lot of ifs and buts, and I don't want to take away too much from softball, but it's been a grind for them and a young team. And I look forward to seeing how they build off of the momentum from this year, much like the women's tennis program, how they build off the momentum from this year into 2026. And again, hopefully you can get some of these freshmen back as a very freshman-laden team, and I think they have a lot of potential moving forward. Also on the dirt, on the diamond, you got baseball. They had a rough weekend as well. They did pick up the first one against Jacksonville State. Had some weather delays, or actually cancellations on Saturday, so they pushed them to a doubleheader on Sunday. In their situation in particular, they needed to get 2 wins this weekend to really get themselves into a good spot as far as finishing in the top 8 to make Conference USA tournament. They lost both games of that doubleheader on Sunday, including an extra inning loss in game 2, where they gave up 4 runs in the top of the 8th inning. I know that that's not typically extra innings, but on a doubleheader in college baseball, they play 7. So they lost in that extra 8th inning on Sunday by a score of 8-4. So where do they sit now? This is kind of a storyline we've been following for the last couple of weeks here on the Blue Raider podcast. Right now, they sit 2 games back with 6 games remaining. They're currently in dead last. They're in 10th place, but they need those 2 games to get into 8th, which again just qualifies you for the Conference USA tournament. So as the saying goes, just get to the tournament. When you get to the tournament, anything could potentially happen. And this team, as we've seen, has big wins over Dallas Baptist, over Western Kentucky, over Jack State. So just get there and you give yourself an opportunity. But luckily, they host Sam Houston this week, who's a team that's currently 1 spot ahead of them in 9th place, who just swept Liberty, the team that's in 8th place. So don't let me confuse too much of this conversation. But with Sam Houston sweeping Liberty, that does keep you in the running to get to 8th place, thankfully. However, to jump Sam Houston, you need to win the series this weekend because you are a game back of Sam Houston. So you still need to sweep. You need to win the series to at least lock into 9th place. But ideally, a sweep would get you what you need because Liberty finishes their season at FIU this weekend, and then their final weekend is at home against Dallas Baptist. So Liberty doesn't have very many winnable games remaining. However, their road is going to be significantly tougher than MTSU's. However, MTSU is still not in a very comfortable boat because Sam Houston is a sweepable series. You have to finish the year on the road at Kennesaw, who Kennesaw is currently sitting in 2nd place in Conference USA. They have an opportunity in a world where they win out these last 2 series, and they could sneak into the number 1 overall spot. And although there's not much advantage to being 1 versus 2, because they're both going to have to play the same amount of games, but there is obviously winning a regular season in your first season Conference USA is a big deal. So I expect Kennesaw State to do everything in their possibility to sweep the Blue Raiders when they go to Kennesaw next week. So all things considered, this Sam Houston series is important for a lot of reasons, but the main reason being this is probably your last 3 winnable games of the year. So if you want any opportunity or a shot to make the conference tournament, it's got to happen this week. You could have really used one against Jack State this last week. You got one. You could have used 2 against Jack State this last week. But now with Sam Houston, again, a team that has barely won double-digit games this year. I believe they're up to 12 now. And winning, this was their first series win, was their sweep against Liberty, a team that's been very bad this year. But they're coming in hot. They're riding a lot of momentum. They are in the same boat that we are in. They have to win these games in order to make the Conference USA tournament. And much like for them, this is their last series of winnable games because they finished their year on the road in Miami against FIU. So this is a very big series for both teams. A sweep is perfect. Winning the series is okay. I mean, that's ideal, but it's okay. But a sweep would be paramount to you getting a chance that final weekend to slide into that 8th spot. So all eyes there. It is senior weekend. So I not only from the aspect of the drama that is Conference USA tournament, but also supporting a lot of these guys. They have the opportunity to return almost all of the starting lineup. Eston Snyder is the only one that I'm aware of that would leave because of eligibility being run out. A lot of these guys will get that junior college extension, assuming the NCAA goes through with their ruling on the House settlement. But big weekend. Big thanks to Eston Snyder and what he's done for the program in all those years. And, of course, get out to Reese Smith Jr. Field, support the baseball team in what is a very huge series against Sam Houston starting this Friday. We'll also go on to golf. Both of our golf programs, their seasons have come to an end. I'm a little bit late on this news as their Conference USA tournaments were a couple weeks ago. The Lady Raiders finished 4th in their Conference USA tournament. Senior Abby Lee finished tied for 5th, where she earned all tournament honors and second team All CUSA for the year. She had 4 top 10 finishes. Abby Lee had a great career here, but really picked it up this last year. I believe she jumped over 500 spots in her clipped rating as far as player ratings for Division I golfers go. So really impressed with Abby Lee and taking over that lead spot here for the Lady Raiders golf program. Sophomore Nicole Johnson finished in 8th. Junior Lainey Campbell finished tied for 23rd. Sophomore Ella Manley finished tied for 32nd. And Manley kind of bounced back from a great freshman year and earned third team All CUSA honors. Another golfer that I look forward to seeing in the blue and white in years to come as she has star-stud potential. Didn't have it at the Conference USA tournament, but has a bright future nonetheless. And then lastly was freshman Caroline Pardue, the local product from Providence Christian. She got subbed into the final round, and she shot her second lowest of her career, her one-year career here at MTSU with a 3 over par. So congrats to the ladies on their 4th place finish at the Conference USA tournament. Did get a win in the fall at the Cardinal Cup. A lot to be admired in the first season of the new head coach. So, again, going to return a lot of production from this lineup besides missing Abby Lee for next year. Men's golf, they had a tough final third day at the Conference USA Championships in Texarkana. They shot 3 over par on that final day and fell all the way down to 6th place, which they needed to finish in the top 4 to get to match play. So they unfortunately missed that mark with that final day score. But senior J.J. Zimmer finished in 6th place at 3 under. Redshirt junior Marcus Vargin finished tied for 16th. Junior Luke Perkins finished 24th. Redshirt junior Carter Maneth finished tied for 25th. And freshman Thad Whitfield finished tied for 31st. A team that a lot of their top talent, J.J. Zimmer in specific, being a senior. But as I listed there, you've got 2 redshirt juniors and Marcus Vargin, Carter Maneth, and then Luke Perkins is the other junior. You're going to have 3 seniors on this team next year. They were holding steady in second place for most of the week in Texarkana, and it just came. I don't want to say collapse. Really, a 3 over as a team isn't bad on that final day. However, the rest of the standings around them performed very well in that final day, and they all surpassed the Raiders in that final round, pushing past them, getting to that match play portion of the tournament. So But men's golf still had a good year altogether, as they normally do. Didn't have no wins this year, but JJ Zimmer had an excellent year. Vargin has had a great year, not necessarily as good of a year as he did his sophomore season, but still a lot of promise in that program moving forward. Track and field is still going strong. They have their Conference USA Championships that is going to be here in Murfreesboro on the 16th through the 18th. That's in 2 weeks. That'll all be here, all of the Conference USA Championships outdoors, that is. Where they stand right now as far as regional qualifiers, John Sherman, the local guy from Rutherford County, 100 and 200 meters. McDonald Sungok is in the 800 meters. Alan Kiplagat, Carmelo Canizaro in the 3K steeplechase, and Privilege Shikara in the 800 meters. So still opportunities to get into the NCAA East regionals with qualifying times at the championships, but that'll be their next race coming up on the 16th through the 18th. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back with some more football and basketball transfer portal news. The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet. Welcome back, and it's time now to dive into some more portal talk. We'll be doing college football now. I know last week we had Connor Smith and Shane Pickering on to talk a little football, just get you completely up to date with where they are with their spring transfer portal signings. In no particular order, this will be reverse chronological order as far as the signings go. But most recently, the Josh Palmer, he's a tight end wide receiver from East Central Community College. He originally signed to Vanderbilt out of high school. But he signs with the Raiders, standing at 6'4", 215 pounds. At East Central Community College, he had 38 catches for 463 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, he's a guy that, because of the junior college ruling, will have 4 years of eligibility. A guy that I would assume has some level of ties to this program due to his Vanderbilt signing in some capacity. However, tight end wide receiver is what he's listed as at 6'4". My initial thought was maybe this is the guy that they're going to have to play slot, but he's pretty long to play slot. I would assume he's going to be more of a tight end at 215. The tight end position is already pretty full at the moment, so I don't know where he necessarily fits into the lineup. Maybe a guy that with 4 years of eligibility may just take a redshirt year. I'm not sure where that would stand, if he even can take a redshirt year because of junior college and all that, but a guy that adds a little bit of size and length to the wide receiver tight end room altogether. They have Amarian Walker, who is a wide receiver defensive back from Michigan, standing at 6'4", 180 pounds. He's going to have 2 years of eligibility left, so he's actually the oldest of our 4 signees this spring portal period so far. But he played limited time at Michigan, had I think over 30 yards in his limited playing time at Michigan, but a guy that saw the field nonetheless at a Big Ten playing at a Big Ten program. But he's listed again. I'll go back, wide receiver and defensive back. I know my thought was, is this like a Travis Hunter type? What are we doing? Is this guy going to play both ways? And my intel would tell me that he's going to start out at wide receiver, given that's where he saw most of his playing time there at Michigan. The wide receiver room is pretty stacked, to be quite honest with you, especially for the type of, I would say, the type of wide receiver that he is. At 180 pounds, it also is realistically still could be a defensive back or a cornerback. Now, also another room that's relatively full right now. So with 2 years of eligibility left, I think he sees the field, but I think fall camp will tell us a lot about where he sees the field from, whether that be in the defensive backfield or at wide receiver. But a guy that has playing experience, obviously has a Big Ten pedigree. So look forward to kind of seeing what he can contribute and on what side of the ball he's going to contribute for the Raiders this year. Next guy, Kaysen Stokes. He's a wide receiver transfer from Central Florida. He's at 6'2", 186 pounds. And this last year, he actually redshirted at Central Florida, so didn't have any playing time to show for it at Central Florida. 4 years of eligibility, a guy that I think is going to be more of a project for him, just someone to kind of fill the wide receiver room with some speed. That is kind of his forte at a more compact 6'2", 186 frame. So kind of see where he fits maybe in years to come. And then lastly, this one is probably the most promising as far as transfer portal pickups that'll actually see the field. It's Ricky Hunt Jr. He's a running back from Ohio who also spent some time at Tulane. 5'11", 210 pounds. He had 571 all-purpose yards on 107 carries at Ohio. He will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Given the news that Flip Krettel is no longer on roster, I know we made that announcement last week, but if you missed that, Flip Krettel, Jaden Krettel is not on the roster. My understanding is it's a academic eligibility reason is why he's not on the team. So you really need that RB2 behind Jaquil Middlebrooks, who Flip Krettel was supposed to be. You have a room full of freshmen and newly transferred red shirts for that matter, where this guy has D1 playing experience, shows a lot of promise, a good size back, I think would fit very complimentary to Jaquil Middlebrooks. So I actually anticipate seeing someone like Ricky Hunt being the 2 deep at the running back position. So as far as all these 4 signings go, not too much impact to the roster or the playing time per se. But I think Ricky Hunt Jr. has the best shot to seeing the field. And this spring portal is going to continue to roll through. I do see them adding some guys on the front, on the defensive front for that matter, just trying to create some depth because they feel comfortable where their starting 3 is. But anything past that is kind of it's thin. So I think they're going to have to find some depth there. They've got the wide receivers that they said that they wanted to add. That's 3 wide receivers. Technically, you have a tight end flex in Josh Palmer, but I don't know if they add any more skill position guys, more so someone on the line, offensive line depth, defensive line depth, maybe a linebacker or 2. So I think that the roster is pretty set, or the starting lineup is pretty set where they are. Just going to kind of backfill with some depth pieces. Bring it on to men's basketball and their off season. Really not much has changed. The only 2 transfer portal commits that we've talked about on this podcast in weeks past, you got Javin Carter from Penn State by way of Alcoa High School, all the way in Alcoa, Tennessee. And then you've got Marcus Whitlock Jr. or MJ Whitlock from Cali Junior College, who signed a couple of weeks ago. If you're anything like me, I'm a little bit concerned only having 2 transfer portal signees because around this time last year, we had 5 commits of our 6 signees. So it has been a lot slower this year with more spots to give. So I don't have the intel for the men's basketball much like I would for the women's side of things. However, I think a lot of the slow play right now is because you don't have much playing time to give, at least in the backcourt, that is, because you've got Carter and Whitlock, who are presumably your 1-2 at the point guard. Your 2 spot's going to be Trey Green. Your 3 spot could be Oglesby. I could see it potentially being Lands. Alston would be the 4. You could even have some backfill time there with Lands as well if Oglesby's at the 3. Hall would be also your backup there. And then your 5 and only 5 on the roster is going to be Chris Loof. And that is where I know when I have conversation with Blue Raider fans like yourself offline here, they're concerned about Chris Loof and what that means for the 5 spot, only having only one true center on roster. And trust me, I'm with you. Chris Loof, I have personally been impressed with his development over the last 2 years, and I can understand the argument that you would have that maybe that he's not going to be a good center, and I understand that. I just think his role is significantly different from a starting 5 versus being a reserve 5 behind a guy like Isam Mustafa or Jared Coleman-Jones. I think we're going to see a different Chris Loof this upcoming season, and I think partially too, the reason we haven't heard any news from recruiting a post player to back up Loof or even start over Loof is because they feel so confident in what they've got. They're taking a bet on what they have. Loof isn't going to be your spot up center like Mustafa. He's not going to be your floor spacer like Jared Coleman-Jones. Loof just provides something a little bit different. He's very sound on the defensive end of the floor. Obviously, it's apparent by his block numbers. The one thing that does concern me is the fouling. If a guy like him, who doesn't necessarily produce on the offensive side, does get good rebounding numbers, but doesn't produce on the offensive side in terms of points, how do you keep him on the floor if he can't stay off the bench from foul trouble? Well, doing a little diving. In 4 games this last year, he played in 20 plus minutes. One of those, he got 4 fouls, and all the others, he had less than 3. So, other than that one off, he does relatively well in the position that he has to play a lot of minutes in terms of fouling, that is. Still doesn't have a double-double under his belt, but the double-double doesn't necessarily isn't indicative of a great center. Now, I'm not going to say that Lufit will be a first-team All-CUSA center or even a second-team All-CUSA center, but when you look collectively at Conference USA this last year, the best teams didn't have outstanding center play. You look at Liberty, they had Aquino, who's an undersized center for that matter. Jack State had Mason Nicholson, again, a guy who is big, a very large body, but when you go past Mason Nicholson, Jack State had nobody at the 5 spot. So I myself am concerned about Luf being the only option at 5. I'd like to think they add some sort of depth piece for him because you have alternative roster options. Like I said, you could play Austin at the 5. You could even play Jared Hall at the 5. Those guys are undersized bigs, but it allows him to play with a little bit of quickness and speed that we've seen McDevitt coach with in the past in his years in Asheville, a team that can play 5 out. You've got 5 players that are deep threats. Luf is a deep threat for that matter. I think more so than Torrey Alston, but that's a different conversation. But the concern for everyone is he's the only center, and that is a legitimate concern. But in Conference USA, you don't have to have elite 5 rotation to be a good Conference USA basketball team. I think with Chris Luf, if you can find a way to get 8 points, 8 rebounds, and get him to stay on the floor for 25 minutes a night, he gives you a chance. Is he going to be, like I said, an all-star? Not likely, but they are betting on his offensive production to pick up, much like they thought they would this last year. Esam was just so great, it's hard to get him off the floor from an offensive side of things, but they think that his offense has improved, his shooting has improved. I think he has good enough touch from 3 that if you wanted to space the floor with him, you could. But they're taking a bet on Luf. They've got to find somebody at some point in time, though, that can give him some minutes in reserve, get him off the floor, get his feet some rest. Because we've seen what happens in year past when you have one guy for one position and he goes down, i.e. Cam Weston. So I don't think that they can afford to leave Luf out there on an island all by himself on the 5. But when it comes in terms of competition, is only having one true center on roster a bad thing? Not necessarily. Is it a great thing? No, but I would not be as concerned as I maybe originally was, having to sit back and think a little bit about where McDevitt and where this coaching staff's head is at moving into the rest of the spring portal. I think that they had targeted some 5s and some post players that they really wanted. Probably didn't outbid for them, whatever that may be. We didn't land that target or those targets. And now we're going to have to find somebody. So I expect something in the coming weeks. They have 3 roster spots available. And actually with the House settlement could potentially have 5 roster spots available, but they have 3 spots available. They've got to find, I would assume, somebody to fill these spots. Their last transfer portal pickup was Christian Fussell last year on the 11th of May. So we're not there quite yet, but that was your last 2 signings, was Justin Porter on the 9th and Fussell on the 11th, which would all fall in this week. So hopefully you hear something this week. Like I said, my intel is I'm not that privy to that information on the men's side of things, but they've got to find, I would assume, somebody. But as far as the big splashes go, I would say that all of those names are pretty much come and gone. But they've got to find someone there in that front court, particularly a 5, which is always the hardest spot to find for the mid-majors because a lot of those guys get scooped up as reserve players for the P4s. But I'm comfortable with Luf being the starting center. I think that, again, if he can take some steps that he needs to take some steps on the offensive side of the ball. I think defensively he gives you what you want. And the backcourt, I think, is solid. I think this backcourt could be great with Carter, Whitlock, Lands, Oglesby, Green. Oglesby's another guy that I didn't really touch too much on, but my understanding is he is 100% back this next year. He looks healthy on all of his stuff I see on social media, getting some shots up back home with his dad. So I look forward to seeing him make a full return this next year, getting back to that comfort level. Again, a 40% 3-point shooting plus shooter from deep, a guy that has a lot of potential to add a big depth piece to that backcourt. And I think he'll be complementary to guys like Trey Green and MJ Whitlock. So Basketball's got some work to do, but I think where the roster is and the starting lineup is right now, not too much room for concern as maybe I originally would have thought last week before last, when we hadn't heard much on signings. So lastly, we'll wrap the episode up with the Lady Raiders. As far as news go, I know last week we had teased that Lizzie Williamson was taking a visit and she might commit, and she committed to Oregon State this last week. So now the Lady Raiders are out on that. As far as targets go, I believe that they're not going after anyone right now. They have 14 on roster. I think they feel very comfortable with where this team is right now. Your starting lineup, again, I've pieced this together myself. No one is telling me this, but you have Elena Contreras. You have Yan Han Lin, or Catherine Lin, as she'll be called, at the 2 spot. Maybe even getting some time there would be Carson Swaney. I think Savannah Davis slides down to the 3 with the addition of Lynn. Macy Pfeiffer would be at the 4, and then you have Nicole Dominguez, the 6'10", 6'11" center from Spain. Some of these backfill time pieces, like Stacey Kaepernick, is someone who I know that she can play the 4 or the 5 length. Emily Monson, someone off the bench who could play the 3 or the 4. Blair Bogus, one of the freshman signees. She could certainly play the 3 or the 4. They have so many utility knife weapons that could play around. I know I said this last year that it could be a team that could play a lot of minutes amongst all these different positions. And Rick Insel's style tends to be he'll play his starting 5 and you'll have a few reserves that get maybe 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes a night. I think this year, being so young and so many new faces, you're only going to be returning 1 starter. You're kind of left in a situation where you have to play around with the starting lineup. I know we'll see what they have in fall when they get to their first couple practices and they kind of roll through their rotations that they have. And maybe through the first couple exhibitions and first non-conference games, they may try some things out, because where I see this roster today could be totally different with where it is at the end of October and early November. So I like to think that there's a lot of playing time still up for grabs. And with that, with the 1 roster spot available, you might try to find someone. So if you're not already following us over at Middle Tennessee, our rivals page, gomiddle.com, I've got the women's transfer portal board there. I threw together just some names that might be worth a look. To my knowledge, I don't think that they're going after anybody, but if there was anyone on the boards to be concerned about, they're on that list. As far as centers or players that could potentially play center, anyone that's 6'3" over, I've got 55 total players that are still left in the transfer portal. As far as experienced players with 2+ years, that's 35 players. And then those that have starting and or 15+ minutes, you got 12 players in the portal. Of those 12 players, I've got 3 on our board that are potential landing spots to the Lady Raiders. Now, I don't know where these girls are with their current recruiting, but some of them do interest me. So if you're not already, if you want to see those players, I highly encourage you to go over to our gomiddle.com, find the transfer portal tracker for women's basketball. I've got them all listed there, as well as some notes on those players. Again, that might be where they go, but I think altogether they're happy with the 14 that they've got signed in the starting lineup that they've got right now. So that'll wrap it up for today's episode. I appreciate you sticking around to the end. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on all of our social medias. That's at Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter /X. It's at Blue Raider Pod. If you're listening to us on YouTube, do me a favor, take just 1 second, subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 100. I know a lot of our listeners don't subscribe due to our stats over at YouTube. So just take a second and hit that subscribe button. If you made it all the way to the end of the episode, I would greatly appreciate it. Once again, thanks to you for sticking around. And until next time, go Blue.